Hello, folks. Welcome to the Solar Fit Renewable Energy Show. Bill Gallagher with my wing woman,
Gloria Edson.
We're on the road today. We're not going to tell you where just yet. It's going to be a secret. Okay, our meteorologist, first grade, will now give us the weather report.
It's absolutely gorgeous here in Daytona Beach. Nice and sunny out. Anticipating a bit of rain later today.
Well, how about the winds?
Oh, my. The winds are calm.
The winds are calm. How about the waves?
The waves are calm.
The wings and the waves are calm. Okay, so there you go, folks. We're coming to you not from our studio today. We're on the road in one of the most beautiful areas you'll ever beat. Well, we're meeting, and one of the most beautiful homes we've ever been in. And I'm going to describe this as best I can in a little bit. But we have some very special guests with us today. But before we do that, I want to give a shout-out to our friends at Daytona Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram for the loyal support through the years, particularly to our driver, Mr. Daniel Dye, who just finished 7th in Atlanta this last weekend. My goodness, what a wonderful race. If you guys have a chance to watch CW, they're up in Chicago, which is a road course right through the middle of Chicago this weekend, and it is going to be fantastic. He's driving full-time for Colleague Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, carrying the Race to Stop Suicide and the Solar Fit colors across America. What do you think of that?
I'm very excited about that. I can't wait to watch the show.
That was pretty cool this weekend, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So they have an in-car camera, which actually you can watch Daniel drive the full race in-car. You can also hear him talking to his spotters and his crew. It's just as good as being there, but a lot safer. So anyway, we have some very special guests today. Gloria, you're going to do the introduction because we're good friends.
Yes, we're out here in Latitudes and Margaritaville in Daytona Beach, and we are here with Mark and Debbie Beechin.
Mark and Debbie Beechin. Mark, you got the mic. How are you, sir?
Doing well, thank you.
Okay. Debbie, how are you?
Wonderful, thanks.
Okay. Now we're going to talk about this beautiful home. Now, so when I came up to it, it was in a cul-de-sac, right? Thank you very much for inviting us out. Beautiful landscaping. I don't know where you did the landscaping. It was beautiful, the grass and everything. But when I walk inside the home, I cannot believe this. It's absolutely beautiful. It's wide open. Debbie, can you describe this a little bit, the architecture? I mean, we're looking through the kitchen that looks out onto a beautiful pool that looks out. You see bobcats, you see deer, you see bear. I don't think you see any gators out here, do you?
Not yet.
Not yet. No gators? Well, you're right up. It's like a preserve. It's absolutely beautiful.
It is. We have a little bit of the preserve going here to separate us from the next cul-de-sac over. So we've got a very private lot back here. And this is the Aruba model because we're island. And we just fell in love with it. We fell in love with it on Blueprint, and once they built the models, we fell in love with it. And then when they built this house, we're still in love with it.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I cannot believe the decorations inside here. The kitchen, as I say, great big. Do you do a lot of cooking?
Yes, we do.
What time would you like us back?
We can cook anytime.
And Mark, what is happy hour? What time does that start?
Happy hour starts whenever you're ready.
That's how you know you're in Margaritaville.
That's right.
It's unbelievable. It's Latitudes is the correct word.
Latitude Margaritaville.
I call it Jimmy Buffettville.
It is.
It's
that's what won us over.
Hats off, man! What a great artist.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Great artist. So let's talk a little bit about your background. We always like to go into this first. Debbie, where were you brought up?
I was actually brought up in Central Florida, over where Cypress Gardens is, Winter Haven. I wasn't born there. I was born in Alaska.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in
Alaska.
Anchorage. And my dad had heart issues, so they said no more cold winters. So you either go to Southern California or you go to Florida. And my parents, neither one had ever been to Florida, so they said, well, let's go to Florida. My mother had lived in Southern California, so she said, off on a new adventure.
Wow.
So I was raised there, and then in my 20s I moved to California.
Jeepers creepers. So you've done the full tour.
Exactly, and then come right back to Florida.
You're born in Anchorage, you say?
Born in Anchorage.
What was that like?
Yes, sir. I have no idea.
Not the birth. I'm talking about the experience. You didn't live there very long?
I didn't. No, my sister did. My sister's 10 years older, and but when I was born, my father had a major heart attack 3 weeks before I was born. Oh. And so they said once the baby is old enough to move. I was born in April. We moved in July.
Oh, my goodness.
I only have pictures to remember.
Oh, gee. When I think of that part of Florida, I think of water skiing and all that.
Yes, lots of water skiing.
Yeah. What was the name of the gardens down
Cypress
there?
Gardens.
Cypress Gardens.
Cypress Gardens.
Gloria, have you ever professionally skied?
No.
No, I mean water ski?
No.
No, you never did?
No.
I thought I saw you on one of those big triangle things. No?
Yeah, I was
Holding the lead flag.
Of course, that was in 1955, so I don't think it was Gloria. Mark, tell us about your background.
Well, I was actually born in Chicago, Illinois, and went to school there in University of Illinois, where I graduated, and came back with a degree in aviation, and no airline at that time was hiring. And I had a girlfriend that said she's moving to California, and if I'd like, I could tag along. So I shamelessly tagged along with her. We moved to the San Francisco area, and I never looked back. And that's where I actually started my career in aviation with United Airlines.
Oh, my goodness. Now, you say they weren't hiring. What year would that have been?
Well, that was the early 70s,
Yeah.
1973.
Wow.
72, 73.
I know very, very well when I graduated from Embry-Riddle, I couldn't get a job on the airlines because all the fellows were coming back with, some jet time, and I'm putting around at 172, and they go, what? How many hours you got? I just got 40 hours.
Yeah, I'm not going to get you very far.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I did, from a young age, I was introduced to aviation by my father, who also worked for United Airlines. So I knew lots about commercial aviation and airplanes, and I just fell in love with it, and I wanted to be a pilot. But early on, my mother suspected that I had color blindness, which normally wasn't tested for, but to be a commercial pilot, you can't be colorblind. So my dad got me an appointment with one of their medical doctors at United, and he gave me the eye test, and yeah, you're colorblind. And he says, forget it, kid, we'll never hire you as a pilot because we only hire perfect pilots. Or pilots out of the military with perfect vision, so I kind of dashed my hopes. I had really wanted to go to the Air Force Academy to be a pilot and be a commercial pilot, so that was kind of disappointing, but I made the best of it, so I ended up with a career in the maintenance end of things, as did Deb with United, so it worked out well for us.
Really? Is that no kidding?
Yeah.
So I went through the maintenance part of it too. I still couldn't get a job when I got out.
Well, that's also true. They weren't hiring mechanics back then, and when I moved to California, I did start at a local general aviation company until the airline, or until United, which had its main maintenance base there in San Francisco, hired me in 1975, and from there I just kept going and got better. And by the way, I did get my private pilot license at the University of Illinois. That was one of the requirements. So I was able to at least get a third-class medical and get a private pilot, and actually owned an airplane for a while.
No kidding.
Had a Bonanza that I was flying.
Oh, yeah, Bonanza, so, nice.
Yeah, so I got to fly, but just not commercially.
So the colorblind test that they're giving you, there was a reason for that, right? So you need to be able to see those colors.
You want the pilot to know the difference between a taxiway and a runway. That's for sure. And the different color lights, instruments in the cockpit, all those things. But the truth is that these days they do allow for waivers. And of course, that was true back in the late 60s, early 70s, where they were just hiring pilots with perfect physical attributes, including vision. But later, when they started hiring so many, they allowed some exceptions. So you could get a waiver through the FAA that allowed you, with colorblindness, to get your first-class physical, first-class medical. And as long as you see the basic colors, which I always could, that colorblind is a bit of a misnomer because you tell somebody you're colorblind, well, what color is that? Well, that's brown. It's not that. It's when they mix those colors together that it gets confusing. So, but anyways, I was too late for the waiver, and as I said, it all worked out for us, and that's why we're together.
Oh my gosh, what a story.
It all worked out well.
That is fantastic. So how did you end up down here in this beautiful state?
I'll let Deb tell that story.
Okay, Deb. All right.
Long roundabout story.
Okay.
We both spent most of our lives in California, and I too worked for United. But it was getting to the point Mark was talking about retirement. We had both been there a long time, and my mother was still living in Winter Haven, and she was getting older and having a few issues with balance. So I was flying across the country a lot to come down here and help her. My sister was in Milwaukee, without flight benefits. So she, couldn't get down as easily. So it was kind of up to me to come and rescue her, so to speak. And so finally Mark said, well, let's look into retiring and moving closer. And I had heard about Latitude Margaritaville because I had been on Jimmy Buffett's Coconut Telegraph since the 80s. So when it was in paper and they mailed it to me. And then it went email, and then, it went a little more electronic. And I got a email from them saying that they were thinking about doing a 55 and older community. Would I be interested in answering some questions, giving them some input? And I said, absolutely. And at that time, Mark had just turned 55. And I said, well, you're old enough, so I can be old enough. And so it was just an idea at that time. We didn't even know where it was going to be. And so when we started talking about retirement, I said, well, that Margaritaville should be coming to fruition here pretty quick. And sure enough, I got an email and they said Daytona Beach. And we said, well, be closer to Mom, help her out. So they opened, and here we are.
Wow. That is a perfect.
I know.
Yeah, perfect thing.
Yeah.
So Gloria, how did you meet Mark and Debbie?
Well, that's a good question. I think I don't remember if it was through an event. I think it was. Was it through an event? No?
No, actually, we were interested in heating for the pool, solar system for the pool. So we I looked for who installed those. There's a couple companies, and Solar Fit being one of them, and another company that came out and gave us an estimate, as did, of course, you. I think that was how we met. And of course, Solar Fit won us over, did a wonderful job, and Gloria is always so helpful, and that's kind of how that relationship grew.
Oh, so there you are. You got the answer.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to compete with someone like Gloria, let me tell you. She's so personable, and she just, customer relation-wise, you didn't hear that, did you? No, okay, she didn't hear that. But she is, how long have you been with Solar Fit?
30 years.
30 years. Holy mackerel. You're only, 31?
Yep.
Okay, she started when she was 1 year old. I can remember it very well. Oh God, we have a great partnership. Every one of our people are just unbelievable. They're dedicated to customer service, and we are so grateful to have you as customers. I know that there's been some interesting times going on with different things, but you guys have been so good. What's going on with your electric bill?
Well, as you said, we had some problems early on, but that's been resolved, and the system is working flawlessly. So we designed a system where initially we were really more concerned about having a backup system, because I'd had a generator and for power outages, and I said, the generator's a pain. I want to go with something that's a little more automated, easier to use. So we invited Gloria out again and talked about what we could design system-wise to replace that generator. So it was some solar panels to support the battery, and the battery, of course, would be the backup in the case of a power outage. And so in the winter, that system we're actually net metering. Even though it's kind of minimal panels, we were net metering. In the summer, there's less of that, of course, because wasn't designed for that. So I'd say in the winter, we were saving easily $80 a month.
Yeah, that's good.
And in the summer, less, with the way the system works. However, with that said, because we're so happy with it, now we want more. And so we invited Gloria out to expand the system, and we're going to add more panels to help us through the summer months with even more savings.
That's awesome. Well, gosh darn it, Gloria.
Yes, we're all excited about the addition there, and their bill will probably be about $25 plus a little bit of tax. But other than that, they'll have the battery storage, and the Franklin is a wonderful battery, beautiful battery. It really is a nice, gorgeous battery, and maybe they'll share it with you if you're nice to them.
Well, I'd like to see that before I leave, for sure. Yeah, so as Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story is we had talked to these folks that convinced us that this particular battery was good as gold, and we got involved in it. It was more like rust. it didn't work out like we wanted to. So we said, okay, we're going to get away with that and put in a really good one. So the Franklin should serve you well for the next few decades. And you guys are going to be here for a few decades. You're not going to move, are you?
Well, no plans to, and we certainly wouldn't have invested in additional panels if we weren't. However, with that said, we did just come back from Kauai, and we were there actually to celebrate our 10th wedding anniversary.
Ooh, congratulations.
We've been together almost 25 years, but we were married 10 years ago on the island of Kauai. So we went back to celebrate our 10th anniversary, and we love it there, and we had considered retiring there. We've gone back a couple times to look to see if there was enough interest to do it, and this time we just really didn't even look. We love visiting, but we weren't there to say, is there a place we can find to move to? Because we love it here, and we're fully invested and want to stay here. So,
well, I thought I was in Hawaii when I went to your house. There's no way. How could you tell the difference? I mean, look at the foliage out there. It's just beautiful.
We do it vicariously. We live in Hawaii vicariously by doing what we do with the house and the outside.
Okay, so we're going to take a short break, folks. When we come back, Mark and Debbie are going to tell us a little bit about Hawaii, because I love hearing about that. We're right back with you, folks. Hi folks, Bill Gallagher with SolarFit here. Have you ever thought about utilizing solar power for your home or business? Well, there's never been a better time to plug into the sun and stop renting electricity. How would you like to let your roof start paying you each month? Give us a call at 445-7606. That's 445-7606. Or visit us at solarfit.com and set yourself free.
SolarFit your life and set yourself free with the sun's free energy.
Hey folks, welcome back to the SolarFit Renewable Energy Show. Bill Gallagher with
Gloria Edson.
We're here with Mark and Debbie Buchan at their beautiful home in Latitudes, also known as Jimmy Buffettville to probably only me. I don't know why I still call them that, but during the break, somehow we got involved in this crazy discussion about aviation, and aviators are really strange people, aren't they? They really are. There's just a tight group, and the things you go through in that occupation are amazing. Do you want to share any of those? Not the one you just shared.
Well,
what are some of the fun things you've done?
The fun things, I think one of the funnest things I did was when I had, as I call it in my previous life, I was still working for United, and we had bought a home up in the foothills of the Sierras, which we loved it up there. It's beautiful up there, but it's a long commute. So I bought an airplane, and it was a Bonanza that I would fly back and forth to work. Not necessarily every day, but most of the days I did try to do it. And then I had an old junker car I parked at the airport. I couldn't fly into San Francisco. It was an airport just south of there. I'd fly in and drive my car up to work at the San Francisco airport, drive back and fly home, which I loved. And I loved flying and did many cross countries. So that was probably one of the best things in my life that I did, was owning an airplane, flying it. Now the downside of that is the cost and the maintenance of them, which I could do because I was a certified, or still am, AMP, airframe and power plant mechanic. So I could do a lot of work on my own airplane, save some money that way. But the flying part of it I loved. But it got to a point where the expense of it just outweighed the fun part, and being practical sort of minded kind of took over. So I sadly gave up the airplane, and haven't actually thought about flying again until I was talking to Bill just a minute ago, and he's sharing his experience.
What do you say we go in halves on a plane? Come on, Mark, we could do it.
It kind of piques your interest, so who knows? Yeah.
Was it a V-tail? What model was it?
It was a V-tail. It was a B model, which was an older one, but it was still a sweet airplane, easy to fly, very fast, very economical, actually. And not much avionics. They have a Loran system, which was not quite as good as GPS, but it could navigate for you. So, but that airplane, you did have to be careful with it, because being so fast, you may have also heard of its nickname, the Doctor Killer.
Yeah.
Because in the early days, doctors and people that had money would buy them, could afford them, but they weren't good pilots, and they had a bad tendency, if you oversped, like your diving nostrils are so clean, they can pick up speed so quickly, they pulled back too hard on the control column, they literally ripped the tail off or damaged the tail to the point where, the airplane, they lost control of it. So you got to be really careful with that aspect of it. So.
Yep, folks, if you're out there looking for a V-tail, it's absolutely true.
In fact, one morning it was still dark, and you did have to be careful flying into San Carlos. You had to stay under the path of the airplanes going into San Francisco. It wasn't quite as regulated as these days post 9/11, but there were still rules about what altitude you could fly at. So you had to be very careful of that, stay underneath that flight path. So I was going to work early one morning, and I hadn't let my friend know, who at that time was the one picking me up. So here I am, trying to descend, stay under that altitude restriction, trying to crank up the old cell phone, and next thing I know, I look down, I'm into yellow. I'm really picking up speed. So that's how you get yourself in trouble. And it's like, this is not smart to be doing this. So, and then I had one incident where the engine, I thought it was going to quit, coughed. I'm like, I should be doing this every day. This is not a good thing, despite all the fun. So,
see, if you're a doctor, you just give the airplane an aspirin.
Well, yeah, I wish.
My engine's coughing.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, there is that part of it. You really need to be careful. But boy, what a fun.
Yeah.
What a fun. Once you get used to it.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever go to Oshkosh?
I went there, but not in my airplane.
Oh.
I've been there, yes, and that's a wonderful event. Oh my goodness! If you're any kind of aviation enthusiast, you must go there. And Fun of the Sun here in Florida is quite nice as well.
It really is. I'd like them to have that when it's cooler, though. It's really pretty hot down there.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's
Yes.
yeah.
In April, right when it starts getting hot.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many fun stories that we could share on that, but renewable energy. That just popped in my mind. This whole thing about renewable energy. Isn't that what we're supposed to be talking about?
We're fans of it for sure.
So I want to give a shout out to our friends at WNZF. This is our 17th season, over 800 broadcasts every week of them supporting us in this program. It's been so much fun. We've had astronauts, 2 different astronauts on here, the folks that went around the world in the first solar-powered airplane, the folks who went around the world, the first solar-powered boat, very, very interesting, but nothing compared to this. This is their interview right here, right? It is. I mean, really, when you think about it, we travel actually all over the country doing these interviews, different events and stuff like that. But coming here and spending some time with you guys is pretty darn awesome.
Well, thank you.
Debbie, did you ever do a lot of flying?
Only as a passenger.
Uh-huh.
I've just got
Did you try?
No.
No.
I wanted to be a pilot. My father was an aircraft mechanic. He worked for the Air Force. He wasn't in the Air Force. That's why we were in Anchorage. And that's why he was in Anchorage. And so I grew up, on Sundays, we would go over to Tampa Airport and watch the airplanes take off and land. I mean, that was my weekends when I was growing up, because my dad loved airplanes. He loved flying. And so, it was something I was always interested in. I was always wanting to do. But those days, they didn't like women pilots.
Yeah.
They're like, we're zero.
Yeah.
And when I looked into it, somebody told me I had to take trigonometry. And I don't know if that's true or not, but math was not my strong suit. And so I just went, probably not for me. But, I ended up working for United Airlines, and I was around the airplanes. I was in the maintenance end of it, and I didn't work on airplanes. I wasn't a mechanic. But I was always around. I was a buyer for airplane parts, so I learned a lot about the airplanes and how they worked. And then I was in the logistics part of it, so I had to get parts to the airplane to get them fixed. So, it wasn't hands-on, but it was brain-on, so it was good.
Wow. What were some of the planes you worked on, Mark?
Well, in general aviation, actually, my career started at a company over at Oakland Airport, and we did contract work for the military. And believe it or not, the first airplane I ever worked on was a T-33. Are you familiar with those?
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
And because I had an A&P, they had me work on the engine, which was a J-33. So we didn't do a complete overhaul, but you did have to, the engine was removed, it was set on a stand, there was a lot of work you had to do on those, including inspections. And I just remember that first one that I worked on, and after I put it all back together, and they put it in the airplane, and then they're getting ready to test fly it, I'm going, oh my gosh, I hope I did this all right, because if that engine quits, it's over for them. So,
good.
But fortunately, it all worked out, and all those engines kept running. And then I was lucky enough to get hired by United, who started hiring back then. In fact, when I moved to San Francisco, I did not know that United had its overhaul facility there. I learned that later, but I had actually had a friend that was working in the engineering department. So I applied there. It took about a year, and I got hired. So at United, I've worked on all the different airplanes they had at that time. 727s, DC-8s, DC-10s, 747s, 737s.
Wow.
I worked on all those. Yeah.
That is amazing.
And then, unfortunately, I was furloughed as a mechanic after about 7 years, which is very common in the airline industry. It's very cyclic, the good times, bad times. But I ended up working for a company, Kaiser Air, over at Oakland Airport again, which was corporate aviation, and I loved that work. It was very interesting. In fact, I became they called the flight attendant a flying mechanic. You went on these international trips with them on their international airplane, Gulfstream, G2s and G3s that they had. You were in the cabin during the flight to act as a flight attendant, primarily there as a flying mechanic. In fact, the first international trip I went on was to Iceland, and the G2 that Southern Pacific owned, and the CEO at that time, Ben Benagini, did an annual fishing trip there in the summer, and he brought his friends from Standard Oil and all these different places, and it was kind of funny because as they were starting the trip in Oakland, and I got introduced to them, and I got introduced to Ben Benagini. I'm quite nervous, and he says, Mark, there's one thing I want to know about you. I assumed he's like, do I know how to work on this airplane if it breaks? He says, do you know how to cook? Like, what? All he saw me as was the flight attendant.
Oh.
But that was interesting. That was good work. I did worked on all their different corporate aircraft and did a lot of traveling with them. So I got to see places around the world I would probably never have otherwise.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and coincidentally, Deb's daughter's husband, he was flying for American Eagle up until 9/11 and got furloughed, and ended up being a pilot for Kaiser Air there in Oakland
no kidding.
for many years.
That is amazing.
He now flies for Southwest. But after the furlough was over and they called me back, I reluctantly went back at that time. And but I did, and it ended up being a very good career for me. But I got out, and when I went back, I said, I'm not going to stay as a mechanic. I want to move up into the management rank, which is what I did. And ended my job in maintenance control as a quality manager, which is wonderful. In fact, that's where I met Deb. That's a whole other story.
Oh,
she
my
can tell you that story.
I'll tell you what.
Want to hear about it?
Well, all I can say is you're a beautiful couple. You got a beautiful home, and we're almost out of time here. Gloria, thank you so much for introducing me to your friends, and thank you guys so much for allowing us to help you with your energy needs. We would love to take a look at that Franklin unit that you've got out there, and
it's a beauty.
Maybe get some pictures of you guys too. What do you think, Gloria?
Yeah, let's get going.
Let's get going.
Let me just, if I might, say one thing about SolarFit. As Bill mentioned earlier on, we had some issues, but they were so good and so helpful. And working with them, I was confident we were going to get it resolved, and we did. And it's a wonderful system. But everybody I've dealt with at SolarFit has been wonderful. Gloria being, the biggest help, but from the guys that came to install it to Kim. You've all been wonderful, so we put our faith in you and trust, and you've done us well, and now we're going to even expand. So,
man, thank you guys so much.
The solar system.
That it just brings a tear to my eye when I hear that. I'll tell you, I'm so proud of everyone that works there. Thank you, folks. Well, gosh, we're going to sign off for this week, folks. Make sure you watch Daniel next week at Chicago, and thank you guys again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you, and have a great weekend.
Okay, have a safe weekend. We'll talk to you next week.